Some of the rarest gemstones on Earth were never hidden in royal vaults or lost civilizations. They were hidden in plain sight. For years, collectors, dealers, and even experts overlooked stones that appeared completely ordinary. Some were mistaken for more common gems. Others sat in obscurity until new discoveries revealed just how extraordinary they really were. What makes these stories remarkable is that the stones never changed. The rarity was already there. The world simply failed to recognize it. In this countdown, you'll discover gemstones that went from overlooked curiosities to some of the most sought-after treasures in the collecting world. A few turned out to be far rarer than anyone originally believed. One eventually challenged the very idea of what a rare gemstone looks like. And by the end of this list, the biggest surprise may not be how rare these stones are. It may be how easy they were to overlook in the first place. Let's begin with number 10. Number 10. Andalusite. Some gemstones become famous because they immediately attract attention. Others spend decades being overlooked for exactly the same reason. At first glance, Andalusite does not appear to belong among the world's rarest gemstones. It lacks the electric blue of Paraiba tourmaline. It does not display the dramatic flashes associated with opal. It rarely appears in luxury advertising campaigns or high-profile auction headlines. For many people, it simply looks ordinary. And that assumption became one of the biggest reasons the gemstone remained underestimated for so long. In the gemstone world, attention often follows color. The brighter, more vivid, and more visually dramatic a stone appears, the more likely collectors are to notice it. Stones that do not immediately demand attention are frequently pushed aside in favor of more fashionable alternatives. Andalusite became a perfect example of this phenomenon. What many casual observers never realize is that high-quality Andalusite possesses an unusual optical property known as pleochroism. Depending on the viewing angle, different colors can appear within the same stone. Shades of green, gold, amber, olive, and reddish-brown can shift across its surface as light moves through the crystal structure. Yet this remarkable feature often goes unnoticed because the color transitions are subtle rather than dramatic. For years, many collectors simply walked past it. Dealers focused on gemstones with stronger commercial demand. Jewelry buyers gravitated towards stones they already recognized. Even among enthusiasts, Andalusite often remained overshadowed by more famous names. The result was a strange paradox. A gemstone possessing characteristics that would normally attract admiration continued living in the shadow of perception itself. As gemological research improved and collectors began looking beyond traditional favorites, attitudes slowly changed. Experts started paying closer attention to specimens displaying exceptional clarity, strong color separation, and larger crystal sizes. What once seemed common began revealing a different reality. Fine gem-quality Andalusite was never as abundant as many people assumed. And because truly exceptional specimens were far scarcer than the market originally believed, demand gradually began to outpace availability. The story of Andalusite is not really about a gemstone. It is about a pattern repeated throughout history. People tend to notice what is loud before they notice what is valuable. Sometimes rarity hides behind modest appearances. Sometimes extraordinary things spend years waiting for someone to look a little more carefully. And as surprising as Andalusite's story may be, the next gemstone reveals something even more fascinating. Not a stone that was ignored because of its appearance, but one that spent years hidden behind the fame of a completely different gemstone. Number 9. Chrysoberyl. One of the strangest things about human attention is that it rarely spreads evenly. When something becomes famous enough, everything around it tends to disappear. The gemstone world provides countless examples of this phenomenon, but few are as striking as Chrysoberyl. Mention the mineral family to most collectors, and a different name immediately comes to mind: Alexandrite. Its dramatic color-changing ability has fascinated collectors for generations. Auction houses celebrate it, museums showcase it, gemology books devote entire sections to it. Yet hidden behind that fame sits a remarkable reality. Alexandrite is not a separate mineral. It is actually a rare variety of Chrysoberyl. For decades, the extraordinary reputation of Alexandrite unintentionally cast a shadow over the gemstone that made it possible. As a result, many buyers learned the famous variety while knowing surprisingly little about Chrysoberyl itself. That created an unusual imbalance. High-quality Chrysoberyl possesses exceptional hardness, impressive brilliance, and remarkable durability. In jewelry, it performs far better than many gemstones that receive significantly more public attention. Fine specimens can display rich golden yellow, greenish yellow, honey, and chartreuse tones that remain vibrant under different lighting conditions. Yet, despite these qualities, Chrysoberyl often occupied an uncomfortable position in the market. It was neither common enough to become widely available nor famous enough to become a household name. For years, this kept it largely outside mainstream conversations. Collectors searched for emeralds, investors chased sapphires. Auction headlines focused on rubies. Meanwhile, Chrysoberyl quietly remained in the background. The irony is difficult to ignore. The same mineral family responsible for one of the world's most celebrated gemstones spent decades being treated as a supporting character in its own story. As gem collectors became more educated and markets matured, perspectives slowly began to shift. Enthusiasts started looking beyond famous names and examining gemstones on their own merits. Attention turned toward rarity, durability, optical performance, and long-term availability rather than reputation alone. What emerged was a growing appreciation for Chrysoberyl itself. Many fine specimens proved far more difficult to locate than buyers expected. Some deposits produced limited material. Others yielded stones that rarely reached the quality levels demanded by serious collectors. Over time, exceptional examples became increasingly sought after. The story of Chrysoberyl reveals a different kind of rarity. Not the rarity of geology, the rarity of attention. Because sometimes a gemstone does not become overlooked due to what it lacks. It becomes overlooked because something standing beside it receives all the applause. And the next gemstone takes that idea even further. A stone so misunderstood that for years experts were not even entirely sure what they were looking at. Number 8. Jeremejevite. History is filled with discoveries that were seen long before they were understood. A star can be observed for centuries before its true nature is revealed. A fossil can sit inside a museum drawer for decades before anyone realizes its significance. In the world of gemstones, the same pattern appears again and again. Sometimes a stone is discovered, then years later it is discovered a second time. Jeremejevite belongs to that unusual category. When early specimens first emerged, there was little reason to believe they represented one of the rarest gem materials on Earth. The crystals were often pale, subtle, and visually unassuming compared to the gemstones dominating the market at the time. They lacked the immediate visual drama that tends to attract attention from collectors and dealers. As a result, understanding came slowly. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, mineral classification was far from perfect. Scientists relied heavily on visual observation, crystal habits, hardness testing, and limited analytical methods. Many minerals appeared similar enough to create confusion, especially when only a handful of specimens existed for study. Jeremejevite entered that uncertain landscape. What initially appeared to be just another uncommon mineral gradually revealed characteristics that did not fit neatly into existing categories. As analytical techniques improved, researchers began identifying a far more complex picture hidden beneath the surface. The gemstone was not merely unusual, it was exceptionally rare. Even more surprising, transparent gem-quality material proved dramatically scarcer than most experts originally suspected. While mineral specimens existed, stones suitable for faceting were extraordinarily difficult to find. In many cases, collectors could spend years studying rare gems without ever encountering a significant example. That realization transformed how the gemstone was viewed, not because the crystal changed, because human knowledge changed. The most fascinating aspect of Jeremejevite's story is that its rarity was not created by a new discovery in the ground. The rarity already existed, Nature had established that long ago. What changed was humanity's ability to recognize it. As laboratories became more sophisticated and gemological research expanded, Jeremejevite slowly moved from obscurity into the category of gemstones sought by advanced collectors. Yet despite growing recognition, it never became widely known outside specialized circles. In a way, that makes the story even more remarkable. For years, the gemstone existed in a strange state between discovery and understanding, visible but not fully seen, known but not fully recognized. Jeremejevite serves as a reminder that reality does not always change when new evidence appears. Sometimes reality stays exactly the same while human understanding catches up, and the next gemstone demonstrates an even more dramatic version of that idea because its path toward rarity did not begin in a laboratory at all. It began with a discovery so unexpected that it sounded almost accidental. Number 7. Red Beryl. When most people imagine where rare treasures are discovered, the mind tends to create the same picture: remote jungles, lost civilizations, hidden mountain ranges, places that already feel extraordinary before the discovery even happens. Reality is often far less dramatic. Some of the rarest treasures on Earth emerge from places that seem completely ordinary. That is exactly what makes the story of Red Beryl so fascinating. At first glance, Red Beryl appears surprisingly modest. Many crystals are small. Some lack the visual impact people expect from a gemstone regarded as one of the rarest in the world. There are no giant deposits stretching across continents, no centuries-old legends surrounding its existence, no famous trade routes built around its discovery. Instead, the gemstone story begins in a relatively isolated region of Utah, and that is where expectations begin to fail. For generations, the gemstone world associated exceptional rarity with famous sources. Burma became linked with rubies. Colombia became synonymous with emeralds. Sri Lanka earned a reputation for sapphires. Certain places became permanently connected with certain treasures. Red Beryl followed a completely different path. Its occurrence proved astonishingly limited. The geological conditions required to form it were so specific that nature seemed reluctant to repeat the process. Even where the right conditions existed, crystal growth rarely produced material suitable for faceting. The result was a gemstone that remained almost invisible to the broader public. Then came the realization that changed everything. Researchers and collectors gradually understood that gem-quality Red Beryl was not merely uncommon, it was extraordinarily scarce. Some estimates suggested that fine Red Beryl could be thousands of times rarer than diamond-quality material. Whether measured by production, availability, or collector access, the numbers painted the same picture. This was not simply a rare gemstone, it was a geological accident that almost never happened. And that realization triggered one of the most powerful psychological responses in collecting culture: the treasure hunt. People became fascinated by the idea that something so exceptional could originate from a location that never occupied the same legendary status as the world's famous gemstone regions. The story challenged a deeply rooted assumption that the greatest discoveries should come from places already known for greatness. Red Beryl proved the opposite. Sometimes rarity emerges from obscurity. Sometimes the map points somewhere nobody was looking, and sometimes an ordinary patch of ground hides something nature may not create again for millions of years. If Red Beryl challenged assumptions about where treasures are found, the next gemstone challenged something even bigger, not where rarity comes from, but how an entire category of gemstones can spend decades misunderstood because of a single label. Number 6. Demantoid Garnet. A single word can change how something is perceived before it is ever examined. In psychology, this is sometimes called a labeling effect. Once a category is assigned, the human brain begins filling in the blanks automatically. Expectations form. Assumptions take over. Details that contradict the label are often ignored. The gemstone world is no exception. Few stones demonstrate this more clearly than Demantoid Garnet. The moment many people hear the word garnet, a familiar image appears. Dark red gemstones, affordable jewelry, common birthstone displays, decorative pieces found in countless stores. That mental shortcut is understandable, but it also happens to be deeply misleading. Because Demantoid Garnet is not simply another garnet. It is one of the most remarkable green gemstones ever discovered. When high-quality specimens first began attracting attention in the 19th century, experts immediately noticed something unusual. The stone displayed exceptional brilliance, powerful dispersion, and flashes of spectral color that rivaled gems far more famous than itself. In some lighting conditions, tiny bursts of rainbow fire seemed to dance across the surface. That optical performance inspired its name. Derived from the Dutch word for diamond, demant, the gemstone was recognized for possessing a brilliance that surprised even experienced observers. Yet despite these qualities, Demantoid faced a problem that had nothing to do with geology. It belonged to the wrong family. The garnet label created expectations long before collectors ever examined the stone itself. Many buyers assumed they already understood what they were looking at. Dealers often focused attention elsewhere. The gemstone became trapped inside a category that failed to communicate its uniqueness. Over time, another reality emerged. Fine demantoid material was far scarcer than many people realized. Particularly prized examples containing distinctive horsetail inclusions from historic Russian sources became increasingly difficult to obtain. Some deposits produced only limited quantities. Others declined over time. Exceptional stones became highly sought after among serious collectors. Gradually, perception began catching up to reality. The gemstone that many dismissed because of its family name started earning recognition based on its own merits. Collectors who looked beyond the label discovered something extraordinary waiting underneath, and that may be the most fascinating part of the story. Nothing about Demantoid changed. The brilliance was always there. The rarity was always there. The beauty was always there. Only the assumptions changed. Demantoid Garnet serves as a reminder that categories are useful for organizing knowledge, but they can also become barriers to understanding. Sometimes a name explains a gemstone. Sometimes a name hides it. And the next gemstone proves that even when a rare stone is finally recognized, another challenge can emerge entirely. What happens when the world discovers there may be almost nowhere left to find it? Number 5. Benitoite. There is a common assumption that rarity is something obvious. If an object is truly rare, people should recognize that fact immediately. Yet history often tells a different story. In many cases, the real extent of scarcity only becomes visible after years of observation, exploration, and failed attempts to find more. Benitoite is a perfect example. When the gemstone was first identified in California in the early 20th century, it attracted attention for its striking appearance. Under the right lighting, its vivid blue color could rival gemstones that were already well established in the jewelry world. Its brilliance, fire, and unusual crystal structure quickly distinguished it from more familiar stones. But at the time, there was still an unanswered question: how much of it actually existed? That uncertainty shaped the early perception of Benitoite. Whenever a new gemstone enters the market, there is often an expectation that additional deposits will eventually be discovered elsewhere. History had already shown that many valuable gemstones appeared in one location before later being found across multiple regions of the world. For a while, Benitoite seemed likely to follow the same pattern, yet the expected discoveries never truly arrived. As years passed, geologists continued studying the mineral. Collectors followed new reports. Prospectors searched for comparable deposits. The gemstone community waited for evidence that larger supplies might emerge. Instead, a very different reality began to take shape. Benitoite remained astonishingly localized. The vast majority of gem-quality material traced back to a remarkably small region of California. While mineral specimens existed elsewhere, stones capable of producing exceptional faceted gems remained extraordinarily limited. Suddenly, the conversation changed. The gemstone itself had not become rarer. Human understanding of its rarity had become more accurate. This distinction matters because scarcity is often misunderstood. Many people imagine rarity as a fixed characteristic visible from the beginning. In reality, true scarcity is frequently revealed through time. Every unsuccessful search, every exhausted source, and every year without major discoveries adds another piece to the puzzle. Benitoite became one of the clearest demonstrations of that process. Collectors gradually realized they were not dealing with a gemstone waiting to be found everywhere. They were dealing with a gemstone tied to a geological circumstance that nature had repeated only sparingly. That realization transformed how the stone was viewed. What once seemed like a promising new discovery increasingly came to resemble a finite opportunity. And perhaps that is the most fascinating lesson hidden within Benitoite's story. The world did not suddenly lose access to the gemstone. The world slowly discovered how little access had existed all along. Because scarcity is not always revealed when something is found. Sometimes scarcity is revealed when people spend decades searching and realize there is almost nothing left to find. And the next gemstone takes that idea to an extreme, because for a time it seemed as though only a handful of examples existed on the entire planet. Number 4. Painite. Most people assume science advances by finding answers. In reality, science often advances by discovering how little information is available. A missing fossil can reshape an evolutionary theory. A single observation can challenge decades of assumptions. And occasionally, a mineral appears so rarely that experts struggle to determine whether they are looking at an extraordinary exception or something genuinely unique. That uncertainty became the defining feature of painite. When the gemstone was first identified in the 1950s, there was nothing about its appearance that immediately suggested it would become one of the most famous rarity stories in gemology. It displayed attractive reddish-brown to reddish-orange tones and possessed characteristics that, while unusual, did not instantly signal an unprecedented discovery. At first, painite seemed important. Then it became confusing. As researchers attempted to learn more about the mineral, a problem emerged. There were almost no specimens available. For years, information remained frustratingly limited. New examples failed to appear in meaningful numbers. Laboratories had little material to study. Collectors rarely encountered it. Dealers almost never handled it. Every attempt to understand the mineral collided with the same obstacle. There simply was not enough evidence. That absence of data gradually transformed painite into something extraordinary. As decades passed, reports repeatedly highlighted the same astonishing fact. Only a tiny number of known crystals existed. The gemstone became famous not because of widespread demand or spectacular auction headlines, but because its scarcity seemed almost impossible to comprehend. For a period of time, painite earned a reputation as one of the rarest minerals known to science. What made the situation so fascinating was that experts were not dealing with a gemstone hidden by mystery or legend. They were confronting a shortage of information. Every new specimen carried enormous significance because each one had the potential to alter existing conclusions. A handful of discoveries could change estimates. A new deposit could transform understanding overnight. Yet until that evidence appeared, researchers were forced to work within severe limitations. Eventually, additional material was found, expanding scientific knowledge and improving availability compared to earlier decades. But by then, painite had already secured its place in gemological history. Not because it was beautiful, not because it was expensive, not even because it was difficult to obtain. Painite became legendary because it exposed a weakness that exists in every field of knowledge. Conclusions are only as strong as the evidence supporting them. For years, painite stood at the edge of what experts could confidently measure, classify, and understand. The gemstone became a reminder that nature does not always provide enough information for immediate certainty. Sometimes the greatest challenge is not finding the answer. Sometimes the greatest challenge is realizing how little data exists to begin with. And the next gemstone pushes that idea even further, because its discovery did not happen in a mine, a laboratory, or a remote expedition. It happened after the stone had already been cut and mistaken for something else entirely. Number 3. Taaffeite. Most discoveries follow a familiar sequence. Something unknown is hidden beneath the ground. Someone searches for it. It is excavated, identified, studied, and eventually introduced to the world. Taaffeite ignored that sequence completely. Its story begins with a contradiction. The gemstone was discovered only after it had already been found. At first, that statement sounds impossible, yet few gemstones have challenged conventional expectations as dramatically as Taaffeite. The story traces back to the mid-20th century when a faceted gemstone caught the attention of an observant collector. Nothing seemed particularly extraordinary about it at first glance. It appeared similar to stones already known within the gem trade. The specimen had been cut, polished, and prepared like countless others. In other words, the difficult part seemed finished. The gemstone had already completed the journey from rough crystal to finished jewel, or so everyone believed. Closer examination revealed an unsettling possibility. The stone did not match the identity assigned to it. What initially appeared to belong to a familiar category began displaying characteristics that resisted explanation. Further analysis confirmed the unexpected truth. The gemstone represented an entirely different mineral species, a rare one, an extremely rare one. The implications were remarkable. Unlike most gemstones, Taaffeite entered scientific history backward. Researchers did not discover rough crystals and then create gemstones from them. Instead, they encountered a finished gemstone first and only later realized that something scientifically significant had been hiding in plain sight. The event challenged a deeply rooted assumption. People often imagine mistakes as obstacles to knowledge. Yet in this case, a misidentification became the very reason a new discovery occurred. Without that initial error, Taaffeite might have remained unnoticed far longer. As awareness grew, another reality emerged. Confirmed Taaffeite specimens proved exceptionally scarce. Gem-quality material appeared only rarely, and finding stones with desirable clarity and size became an ongoing challenge for collectors. Even experienced gemologists could spend years studying rare gemstones without ever handling an important example. The rarity was genuine, but what made the story unforgettable was not the scarcity itself. It was the reversal. The gemstone seemed to appear from nowhere, not because nature had hidden it, but because human assumptions had hidden it. For years, the stone sat within a framework that seemed correct. Then one observation shattered that framework completely. Taaffeite became a powerful reminder that discoveries do not always arrive through new expeditions, deeper mines, or advanced technology. Sometimes they arrive when someone questions a conclusion that everyone else accepts, because occasionally the line separating a mistake from a breakthrough is far thinner than it appears. And the next gemstone demonstrates an even more dramatic version of hidden rarity, a stone so elusive that for years many collectors could spend an entire career without ever seeing one in person. Number 2. Musgravite. Some things become rare because they disappear. Others become rare because demand suddenly explodes. But the most fascinating kind of rarity is the kind that exists quietly for years before anyone notices. Musgravite belongs to that category. Long before collectors pursued it, before auction houses highlighted it, and before gemologists fully understood its significance, Musgravite was already one of the rarest gemstones on Earth. The world simply did not know it yet. That distinction is important because rarity is often confused with popularity. When prices rise, attention follows. When attention grows, people assume something has become valuable or scarce. Musgravite followed the opposite path. Its scarcity came first. Recognition arrived much later. The gemstone was initially identified in a remote region of Australia within the Musgrave Ranges that eventually inspired its name. Even then, the discovery did not trigger immediate excitement throughout the gem world. The material appeared similar enough to certain other minerals that its true significance remained difficult to appreciate, and that created a familiar problem. When something looks too similar to what is already known, people tend to assume it belongs to what is already known. For years, Musgravite existed near the edge of scientific and commercial awareness. It was recognized, cataloged, and studied, but encounters remained exceptionally uncommon. Gem-quality examples were even more elusive. The number of faceted stones available to collectors remained remarkably small. As analytical technology improved and gemological research expanded, a clearer picture emerged. Musgravite was not merely uncommon, it occupied an entirely different level of scarcity. Collectors who specialized in rare gemstones began viewing it as one of the ultimate acquisitions. Dealers rarely handled important specimens. Museums and private collections competed for examples whenever notable stones appeared. Yet perhaps the most interesting aspect of Musgravite's story is how little changed in nature itself. No dramatic geological event occurred. No sudden collapse in production created the rarity. The gemstone had always been extraordinarily scarce. Human understanding simply arrived late. This pattern appears throughout history. Entire species, archaeological sites, and scientific phenomena have existed for centuries before people recognized their true significance. Musgravite demonstrates that the same principle applies to gemstones. Reality does not require human awareness to exist. A gemstone can remain exceptionally rare even when almost nobody is paying attention. And that idea carries a strange implication. There may have been moments when Musgravite sat unnoticed among minerals that attracted far more attention. It may have existed beside stones that seemed more important, more famous, or more valuable. Yet all along, one of the rarest gemstones on Earth was quietly waiting for the world to catch up. Because sometimes rarity does not announce itself. Sometimes it remains nearly invisible. And that brings us to number 1. A gemstone that delivers the ultimate twist in this countdown, proving that even one of the rarest treasures on Earth can appear surprisingly ordinary to the untrained eye. Number 1. Red diamond. Human beings are remarkably good at noticing things that stand out. Bright colors attract attention. Large objects command focus. Spectacular displays create lasting memories. But the history of rare gemstones reveals an uncomfortable truth. What captures attention is not always what possesses the greatest value, and no gemstone illustrates that contradiction more completely than red diamond. By the time most people reach the top of a list about rare gemstones, expectations have already formed. The imagination begins constructing something extraordinary, perhaps a massive crystal, an impossibly vibrant color, or a gemstone so visually overwhelming that its rarity feels obvious from the first glance. Red diamond often refuses to cooperate with those expectations. Some specimens are surprisingly small. Others display color that appears subtle compared to the dramatic blues of Paraiba tourmaline or the vivid greens of fine emeralds. To an untrained observer, a red diamond may not immediately announce that it belongs among the rarest gemstones ever discovered. And that is precisely what makes it such a powerful conclusion to this story. Because red diamond forces a confrontation with one of humanity's oldest assumptions. If something is truly exceptional, surely it should look exceptional. Nature never agreed to that rule. The extraordinary rarity of red diamonds is linked to geological conditions that remain only partially understood. Unlike more common diamond colors, naturally occurring red diamonds occupy an incredibly small corner of the gemstone world. Genuine examples appear so infrequently that even major collectors may spend decades without encountering an important specimen. For many years, their rarity was difficult to fully appreciate because there were simply so few examples available for study, comparison, and trade. Yet as gemological knowledge expanded and documented specimens accumulated, a remarkable picture emerged. Red diamonds were not merely rare, they existed in a category that challenged conventional comparisons. Suddenly, conversations about rarity changed. The benchmark was no longer beauty alone, it was probability. How often could nature produce such a gemstone? How many people would ever see one? How many collectors would ever own one? Those questions revealed something extraordinary. The most remarkable aspect of red diamond is not that it became valuable. Many gemstones become valuable. The remarkable part is that one of the rarest treasures on Earth can still appear deceptively ordinary to someone who does not know its story. And that realization brings this entire countdown full circle. From Andalusite to Musgravite, every gemstone on this list shared a common theme. They were overlooked, misunderstood, underestimated, misidentified, overshadowed, or recognized too late. The stones did not change. Human perception did. Red diamond stands at number 1 because it represents the ultimate lesson hidden throughout this countdown. The rarest things in the world are not always the loudest. Sometimes they are the easiest to overlook, and sometimes the greatest mistake is believing that true rarity should be obvious. The most surprising thing about the gemstones in this countdown is that none of them suddenly became rare. They were rare all along. What changed was human understanding. Again and again, collectors, scientists, and entire markets overlook something extraordinary because it appeared ordinary at first glance, and that may be the biggest lesson hidden in these stones. True rarity does not always announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly for the world to recognize it. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden side of gemstones, be sure to join us for more stories, discoveries, and remarkable treasures from the natural world.